woods and the wail of the woods and the smoke and the roar of the fire, and the axe and the saw and the measure and the maul and the muscle and the nerve and the timber, and the bill of the duck and the tongue of the groove and the click of the teeth on the tongue, and the muscle and the nerve and the sinew and the joint and the bone and the vein and the marrow, and the axe and the saw and the measure and the maul and the wail and the thrill of the wood. Work the wood.
Good morning, or otherwise Dobry din, Vishem. Unglued Brit here to give you another edition of Sunday Q&As with your boy Unglued Brit, fresh from Moscow Oblast. So let's crack on for some questions. Right, we've got our first questions of the day, and the first questions that we've got are from Load Runner. In fact, yeah, it's kind of one question, isn't it? Thank you, Load Runner, for your question, as it reads as follows. Do you think there are forces in England today that are capable of returning the country to its greatest years, when your fellow countrymen were proud of their nation and honoured their native traditions? Thanks. Well, Load Runner, if there's one thing that I don't want to be is too negative. It's always nice to have that glimmer of hope, no matter how hopeless a situation may feel, you know. However, the thing is, the way the post-World War II consensus was organised, we've got generations and generations of people at this point that have fell into the trap of neoliberal ideology. And what that's led the country to, I'm afraid, is kind of a mind virus, something that could only be described as the liberal woke mind virus. And this is something that simply cannot be cured overnight. Now, I try not to fall for accelerationism, though for this case it's kind of necessary. So there's the accelerationist part of me that wants to say we need not return. In fact, how far do you want to go back? Where do you want to return to? Because I don't think there's any way back at this point. We've kind of got ourselves into this trap, and wherever you want to date it back to is kind of ambiguous. It's hard to really put a finger on it. So, for instance, the English constitutionalists may argue the fact that it actually dates back to when we started calling ourselves Britain rather than England. So, of course, England is there, but we kind of assumed this title of the being British. However, little did we know that that would open us up for a whole can of worms where we would actually erase our old common law. There are many different speakers on the matter of English constitutionalism, Magna Carta, and all of these different things, and how they have basically been subverted to take away our rights and freedoms as free men on the lands of England. So would it be nice to go back to there? Well, technically, yes, it would be lovely to go back to a point where we actually consider ourselves as English, similar to how the Welsh, the Irish, the Scottish all consider themselves Welsh, Irish and Scottish. But the minute that you promote the fact that you're English in England seems kind of nationalistic to some, as if you're some form of ethno-nationalist when it's okay when other people do it. So there's like a double standard there, really. However, that would be a good place to go back to, actually. I think that going back to our basic rights and stripping everything away, back to the English Bill of Rights and the Magna Carta would probably be the only way that you could get England and English people back on their feet to be proud of their nation. On the flip side, like I said, it's an ambiguous term to say return to something. I don't think we can return to anything because everyone wants to return to a different time. Some people say they want to return to the 1950s. Some people say they want to return to the colonial era. Some people say that they want to return to here, there, and everywhere. However, I err on the side of skepticism because I say we're never going to be able to. We've got to accept the reality as it is. The country has got to go through a lot more darkness before it can ever even consider reaching the light again. Like, it would be nice to say, return to, say, the 1960s, 70s, 80s, despite the fact that the country was undergoing a liberal revolution and a feminist revolution. At least you could buy a property. At least infrastructure was being built, you know. It would be nice. Reminiscing over a time of greatness is nice, but it's not coming back, and we all have to be realistic, and the sooner that Britain can be realistic with itself, it's just not what it once was, the better. So we've got to look forward. We've got to look forward to where the world is heading. And sadly, I don't think Britain's got much of a future through the 2030s and maybe beyond that, but certainly through the 2030s. We know that, of course, Poland is the fastest growing economy within the EU and within the EU blocks, and it turns out that a good portion of Poland is now a lot wealthier per capita than a lot of British places. So when we think about that, we're starting to see the energy moving east anyway. I believe that every empire must go through its rise and its fall, similar to the Roman Empire. We watched how that fell in decay, breads and circuses. We watched how, of course, through history, they ended up, of course, having their time of decadence. And that's sadly what Britain is going through now. There seem to be no lines as to how far the decadence will go, whether it be through destroying your own population and destroying their minds, destroying any sense of patriotism or nationalism, destroying any sense of traditionalism. The problem is you have such an over-incumbent state, a bit of a David versus Goliath matter in the United Kingdom. Anyone that stands up in the United Kingdom will be crushed at this point, will be crushed. The state is currently in a very strong place, in a very, very strong place, and it's grown itself to a point where, in order to break it, would seem idiotic. However, it's like the elephant on stilts, you know. The elephant is big, the elephant is heavy, but the stilts are going to break because, again, it's too weak to hold an elephant on stilts. So, you know, it's one of those sometimes in life, you've got to treat it almost like judo. When you know something will collapse, let it collapse. Stand out of the way, because it will crush a lot of people on the way down. So it's just best to get out of the way, let it collapse, and then maybe, long term, don't think about yourself, think about the next generations. You know, if you have a lot of kids in the future, they might be the ones to rebuild it. You know, it might be my grandchildren that go to rebuild it after the state apparatus collapses in on itself. I fear that time will be soon. However, when it does, there will be serious issues within the United Kingdom. At the moment, we're going through a stage of what could only be described as anarcho-tyranny. And of course, it being an anarcho-tyranny basically means for the majority of people that are going to be locked up during this time, they're going to be the ones that are currently against this neoliberal system that has basically been built. And they're going to basically allow criminals that just simply don't go against the state, but go against you as the regular person, to run free. Because as long as they're not a problem for the state and they're a problem for you, then why pursue them when you can pursue a 90-year-old online for something she said on Facebook? It's a lot easier for the police to pursue those matters. So the police win, the government win, and you lose. And you still have to pay for your loss through insane taxation. So my general take is, long term, let it collapse. Just get out of the way. Move your family out of the way. Have your kids elsewhere. Have your kids in an up-and-coming country. You see, Russia's already had its collapse. And of course it had its anarchic stage of the 90s. And now order has been found. And that wasn't too long ago, but you've got to remember, Britain hasn't had that, actually. The 90s were completely different in Britain. Therefore, it's just wise to allow the thing to collapse and just be out of the way. Because fighting it now will just mean prison time. But it will collapse. I am sure of it. This won't last forever, you know? You see, you don't want to build something or build a future in a country that has no future, under a system that has no future. And it has no future. Not now. I mean, just look at what they're doing. I mean, for crying out loud, they're not building any serious infrastructure. They're not doing anything to make sure that the water's good, that they've got enough water. They're not doing anything to bring anyone's electricity bills down. No. But they've got plenty of money to throw at hate crimes and locking people up for having a different opinion. So when you think about it, right, they've kind of just built the system and they're only throwing money at things that encourage a certain ideology to flourish. So, for instance, they're going to be throwing loads of money at blocking out the sun. They're going to be dimming the sun, right? So, imagine England. Did you know that Russia has more sunlight hours per year than England? Not many people know that, but it's true. There's actually a sunlight map where you can see how many hours are had of sunlight from country to country. Britain has the least sunlight in Europe every single year. However, they're going to block out the little bit of sun that people do have, which is, of course, detrimental to people's health. You know, they act like the sun is some kind of curse, but if it is, like, why are we all here? I mean, we shouldn't have a problem. In fact, we need vitamin D from the sun. The one time of year where people are least depressed is in the summer and in the spring when it's lighter, when they've got sunlight, when they're getting enough vitamin D. And they're going to block that little bit out. And that's what they're throwing money at. Now, there is one problem with what they have done, which may work for them. However, for the average English person or any one of the Isles, it might be really bad. Because, of course, as we know, in Britain at the moment, they are trying to build up their own armed forces by throwing white English men into the meat grinder of Ukraine. That is the dream. That is the goal. A lot of them are saying, no, we won't go. Which I hope they don't. The more that don't go, the better. Just pick prison, guys, if you're watching. Seriously. Prison. At least in prison, you probably have a higher chance of living. You're definitely going to get absolutely mowed down in Ukraine, right? So the point being is as follows. They're currently importing en masse the entirety of the third world. Basically, millions upon millions of new arrivals. And they're just going to kill off their English population. So the fighting age, fertile men, who are the ones that would repopulate the land. So they want to get them all killed off in a war that has nothing to do with them. and then just have foreigners inhabit the land, so they can kind of shape and mould it into the land that they want. Because, let's face it, why would non-English people argue for English rights or Magna Carta? They're not going to care. So they can kind of be shaped or moulded into whatever new paradigm they want to bring in anyway. So for as long as the English can actually keep a majority in the country, then there's kind of hope. The people will be there, and hopefully if they get reconnected with their ancestry and start to understand where they're from, the great lands in which they inhabit, maybe not so great these days, but if they can go back to the times of greatness, that would be great. But it's not going to be going back, it's going to be going forward. But I don't hold out hope at this point. Sadly, I just don't. So in summary, patience. Patience. Just get out of the way, carry on with your own life elsewhere. Because there is no point in allowing a system. If you are a builder, right? You don't want to build when you know there's a high probability of whatever you build for the future is going to be destroyed. Because it just feels pointless then. What's the point in building anything on such lands? Whereas I see myself as a builder, a family builder, a person that wants to build civilization, that wants to provide for civilization, and to be surrounded by destruction, it just doesn't seem right to me. The fact of the matter is, the British people are so propagandised. The propaganda and the message is in your face and you can't escape it. It's plastered all over your radio. It's in every advertisement. It's on every bus stop. It's on every corner. You cannot escape the propagandisation. They have been literally brainwashed. Most of them are still incredibly brainwashed. And you notice this when you call people back home. You notice it. The brainwashing is just so severe. And it's very difficult for me, as a British person that's lived abroad for years now, to even talk to them, because things slip out of my mouth, right? Because in Russia, we are not propagandised like in Britain.
For a start, this piece only has two elements, asset and values. It doesn't even have a target because the ad comes off as a middle finger to Welsh people. It might as well read, "You will be replaced!" You could argue that the ad is intended as demoralisation propaganda, but even that doesn't work because it's too much of a meme to generate anything other than laughter and derision. So the first problem we have is the value. Fundamentalist Islam is now an inseparable part of Welsh identity. That's a tough sell, but I'll do my best. Bear in mind, all I can do is create division propaganda here. I cannot create a consensus piece. The goal of our revised poster will be to anger and divide Welsh people, to demoralise them, and to poison the public conversation by encouraging a redefinition of Welsh identity. We're going to move from an open value to an obfuscated value. We can't go full hidden value because we do need Fatima in the photo. A major problem with this poster is that it has no props. It lacks context and place. So let's start with that. Rugby is popular in Wales, so let's use a rugby pitch, specifically the goal area. We want the goalposts visible in the photo so we can create a subliminal that links Welsh identity with Islam. We'll replace the Guinness ads on the goalposts with banners that read Ramadan Mubarak. Now, we need some human props. Let's start with a hot girl, always a winner. Here's a hot girl wrapped in a Welsh flag. I love it. Female empowerment and all that shite. Get her in there. She's actually vital to the political composition of this image, but I'll explain more on that in a bit. Now, a couple of innocent-looking female rugby fans, good so far. Now let's find a spot for Fatima. I know Plaid Cymru want an angry-looking woman in a burqa, but we're going with a much more palatable version. Two Fatima in a hijab, smiling. Having two of them in the image infuses a sense of friendship into the Islamist element of the piece. We'll throw in a gay couple because intersectionality, queers for Palestine and all that. Notice the placement of the Welsh dragon on the sexual identitarian flag, a subliminal to indicate that Wales is now a queerified nation. A nice touch, if I don't mind saying so. Now we need a human shield. As loathed as we are to include a straight white man in a representation of modern Wales, we will toss one in as a kind of placatory token, but his presence is only tolerated because he is the minder of his wheelchair-bound, mentally disabled son, who is, of course, our primary human deflector shield. The Spring 2025 NPC update patch will include an instruction to respond to any criticism of this image with "Lol, conservative bigots see a disabled guy in a wheelchair and immediately start frothing at the mouth, screaming woke. Hashtag Wheels, it's us." I know this image might look like I've loaded a shotgun with woke and blasted it at a blank canvas, but that's where Hot Girl comes in. Her job is to act as a shield against cry-wokes, because we know that smoking hot women in a sexualized posture cannot be part of any woke aesthetic. Indeed, woke seeks to eradicate hot feminine women from cultural spaces altogether, which is why she's here. This image is intended to be a psychic attack against the native Welsh, but that attack will be rendered ineffective if it can be easily dismissed as woke garbage. Hot Girl renders this image post-woke, which will also serve to confuse the enemy. They will look at this image and struggle to respond coherently to it. An added bonus of Hot Girl is that she dominates the viewer's attention, rendering subliminal elements more effective. The hot Welsh girl in our image plays the exact same role in this piece as the girl with the excellent breasts does in the Virgin piece. The general sense of positivity in the image helps to obfuscate the core value that Islamism is now an inexorable aspect of Welsh identity. The smiling face is used to hide the vicious intent. To quote 1984, the Ministry of Peace concerns itself with war, the Ministry of Truth with lies, the Ministry of Love with torture. Our image should not be an angry burqa-clad migrant glaring daggers at her enemies. It should be a big, gay, happy, differently abled, sexy Islamic Welsh smile.
And it doesn't matter who in the comments thinks that, oh yeah, they've got their own form. No, it's nothing like what the British government have that they're using on the British people. It's far more advanced and far more insidious. It's not open. You would not be able to really recognise it unless you really were paying attention. Right. So the point being here is, okay, they are so brainwashed that at this point, right, they would fight their own that want to save their nation. So you've kind of got this bunch of people, and it's the majority, that are just happy to basically just watch it fall to these people that are just robbing them, and it's sad. It's sad, but it is what it is. There really isn't much that can be done at this point, apart from be patient and stay out of the way. But back to my point about calling home, yeah, I have to censor my speech. And there's a reason for it. I'll just say stuff that you can just say in Russia, because whether people believe it or not, I've certainly got a lot more freedom of speech to speak in Russia. And I'll just say things, like things will just leave my mouth, because I'm not under the spell. The daily constant propagandisation of the liberal woke mind virus that you have in Britain, it's literally everywhere. You can't escape it for a second. And that's the thing, when you're not living around it for so long, it's kind of like, yeah, you forget, like your brain just is free again. You're not under the spell that they perform on the British people on a daily basis. So you end up just saying stuff that you just can't say because of the liberal woke mind virus that is in plagues Britain. So that's the thing. You'll just say things that you just can't say there. And then people will be like, ooh, like this. And they'll be worried. And it's like, what I said was actually just completely factual and true. But yeah, you just can't say it in Britain. But I'm not in Britain. So, anyway, I'm going to move on to the next question now. So the next line of questioning is from our friend Rick Current. Thanks for all the questions again, bro. I noticed that, of course, you do send in a lot of good questions. So we're going to start with question number 1. Are you planning any trips around Russia, like the Urals, Central Russia, the Far East, Siberia, or the Caucasus? Okay, so we're just going to start with that question then, any trips that I'm planning. So at the moment, my daughter is 11 months old. It's a little bit difficult to kind of travel at this present moment in time. However, I certainly will be. It's like an absolute dream. But right now, I do want to wait for my daughter to grow up a little bit and then go on these adventures. But there will be trips coming. In fact, my wife's speaking about a trip to St. Petersburg at some point. Actually, a place I've never enjoyed. I've never been. Because ever since I've been here, I've been working. There has not really been a break, if you know what I mean. However, there will be possibilities. It's coming up in the future. Just mark my words. Do you think keeping savings in foreign currency like dollars or euros is a smart move in the long run? Okay, I don't think keeping savings in currency is a good idea. That's it. So the question is, what do I mean by that? Okay. Yeah, don't keep your savings in foreign currency. Saving is basically for losers. So the trick is with foreign currency is that if you're going to keep your money in it, right, it's never going to keep up with inflation, number 1. So what are you going to do about that? Number 2 is you could always invest it into gold. I mean, gold is God's money. At the end of the day, if you keep it in gold, it doesn't matter how much of a devaluation you get to the currency. You're going to always have the same price for gold. So a gold coin back 100 years ago would have brought you a lovely stay in a luxury French hotel. And today, it will afford you the same stay in the same luxury hotel. So why is that? And why has it become expensive? It's not that gold, per se, has become more expensive. It's actually remained the same. The currency's just become weaker. So a lot of people say, oh, wow, look, the currency, for instance, when I was a boy, I used to eat these 15 pence. Now, I remember, I think they were like 10 pence. Freddo bars. And I think they're around about 30 pence now. Let's see the price of a Freddo bar, actually. What's the price of a Freddo bar? Freddo bar price. Okay. Freddo bar price. A Freddo is now like 30 pence, 35 pence from what I'm seeing on Google. So, of course, I'll just quickly print screen that just to drop it in there. Freddo has gone up extremely. And the chocolate's still the same. I wouldn't be surprised if it's smaller either. It was a small bar to begin with, but yeah, cost of a Freddo, that's a good bit of economics to go by. But yeah, point being is, now, like that used to be like 5 pence. Now, if I had gold, for instance, like, and I somehow was able to split it up into small pieces, and these small pieces were worth, let's call it 5 pence at the time, well, that means that those small pieces would still buy me the same thing, you know? So there's one thing you can do. Gold, silver. That's a safe place of storage, and in the case of what may eventually come, which is a hyperinflationary scenario from constantly printing money into worthlessness, because let's face it, modern monetary policy isn't exactly built to last. It's got to collapse at some point, which means that one day there will come a point where, you know, you'll see Europeans carrying euros around in wheelbarrows to buy a loaf of bread. That day will come. Goodness, and I'm not going to make any predictions on when it's going to be, but it's coming. Because at the end of the day, like, that system is just built on sand. I mean, unless it is backed by gold or becomes backed by something of actual intrinsic value rather than confidence, then that day is going to come. So that money will just get weaker and weaker and weaker until they can't afford anything. So buying hard assets, and when I say gold, I mean you better hold it in your hand and store it safely. Then there's the other option of cryptocurrencies. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, okay? However, I am certainly a holder of cryptocurrencies. Why do I hold them? Because personally, I believe that is the future. It's digital gold. Take a look into cryptocurrencies, and that's up to you. That's all I'm really going to say on the matter. I've been in the game since about 2016 now. And all I can say is that so far so good. And I mean, there are reasons to believe that is going to be the future of money, like the literal future of money. I don't really like to disclose what I do hold. However, it's always worth doing research on big companies that seem to be going places, such as Ripple, for instance, XRP. So, of course, the CEO of XRP is buddy with Donald J. Trump, isn't he? And, of course, he's got major contracts with some of the largest financial institutions in the world. I mean, their case has just been thrown out by the SEC. So, you know, it looks like it's all green lights there. And all I do is just follow the 4-year cycles. Just follow the 4-year cycles, M2 global money supply. But again, I'm not a financial advisor, so don't just go doing whatever I do. I just do it because I'm willing to bet that the future is absolutely going to be cryptocurrency, in the same respect that Microsoft computing was once just a backyard jibby job, and then it became the operating system of the world. And I bet no one saw that coming. Back in the 1980s, the whole idea that everybody would have a computer in their home would have just seemed absolutely bonkers. Like, why would anyone want this box in their home that they can type on when you can just, like, write letters? Well, before you know it, everybody's got one. Everybody. And everybody needs one. Every dentistry office needs one. Every doctor's office needs one. Every business needs one. Every institution. So again, this is just the digitalisation and the tokenisation of everything, because whether we like it or not. And I know a lot of people say, oh no, but CBDCs, yeah, true, CBDCs, I mean, there's a lot to be said for them, isn't there, in terms of where things seem to be going. But realistically, it seems that whether we like it or not, that's going to be the system of the future, the CBDC, central bank digital currency future. So we know that's going to be the case, so what are we going to do about it is basically it. So personally, yeah, I'd say for me, yeah, it's got to be hard assets like gold, silver, crypto. But again, don't go betting the house on a blooming rubbish coin. Find a project you believe in and then see what happens. But again, I mean, if you really are conservative and you don't want to take such risky bets, gold is where you put your money, really. Physical hard gold, not a bloody contract. But yeah, that is the future. The cryptocurrency is the future. That is the direction that the whole world's going to travel in. It's as simple as that. That's all I can say on the matter. It would probably be an entire video to kind of put into words why. But again, just know how money works is probably the most important thing. The difference between money and currency. What is money? What is currency? We know that the systems that we do have in place now, they have actually been tried and tested before. You can go back to the Roman era, you can go back to ancient China, and you can see what happens. It never lasts. It never lasts, this currency system. It eventually breaks down. It must break down. It will only get weaker and weaker. There is no way that it will get stronger. It will always have inflationary problems. Needless to say, as well, why would you even save in Western currencies? I mean, what are you going to get? Do you expect 20% returns per year? I don't think so. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You just know what not to do, and then kind of pick the best option out of what not to do, basically. But you can't go wrong with gold. Can't go wrong with that. So, I mean, if you wanted to just save and actually save, well, it's got to be gold, hasn't it? It's got to be gold and silver. It's got to be. And in fact, there seems to be a push by Tinkoff at the moment, I believe. It's not a sponsorship, by the way. I've just seen it. Just seen it on the app. You can just buy gold and then they'll deliver it to you. It's class. And that's the thing, long term, you can't go wrong with it. So yeah, like, again, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not a financial advisor, okay? But there are certainly things not to do, and bloody saving in currency. I mean, yeah, in the long term, that's certainly not something that I would do. So we got the next question. What's your take on why the US seems so keen on getting control over Canada and Greenland? I think it's consolidation of empire. It's drawing new boundaries around the empire and starting to look inward, personally. I think that, again, the key thing is, I think the US has started to become self-aware of where the limits of her power lie. They've had decades and decades of unsuccessful campaigns in the Middle East that have left Afghanistan in a state, that have left the entirety of the Middle East in a state, and then suddenly they start getting involved in this hot war with Russia, this proxy war. And I think Russia has really kind of put that barrier there that they have to live by. The barrier's here, you're not crossing it. So they've been shown their limits, basically. And that's kind of the thing. I think that now that they have been shown their limits, where the limits lie for their empire, I think now is the consolidation stage. So they've been abroad, of course, exploiting the entirety of the planet. And I'm not talking about the average American. I think the average American is great from the ones that I've met. I'm talking about the neoliberal globalist hegemon. And I think that their days are coming to an end. They are well and truly numbered. And I believe that the US has become self-aware. And I specifically say the US, as opposed to Britain, as opposed to the EU, which are absolutely not self-aware. and want to keep that show on the road for as long as possible. And so yeah, in its consolidation stages, I think that there's a two-part role to the future of the US now. It's going to be consolidation. It's realising that we can no longer play the world's superpower for much longer. The game is coming to an end, and they know it. Oh yeah, they know it now. Because how much further can they push Russia without ending up in an all-out nuclear war? I think they know. And that's the thing, they're turning on China to try and have a pop, but it's a soft pop. It's a tariff pop. It's not a pop, is it? It's just a little, come on, tariff, we don't like you, yeah, it's but again, it's not enough to get a ship sank, is it? So yeah, now they're testing the limits with China, aren't they? And they're finding out pretty quickly how the limits are for them and how it's going to work out. But that's kind of the thing for them. They're in a position now where it's kind of like, well, they can't push the limits with Russia. They can't do it with China. So that's where multipolarism comes in. And I'm more than happy to be on this side of the equation than that side, to be honest with you. But the idea of civilizational states, too, that's cropping up pretty quickly. No longer is it going to be Fukuyama's end of history. It's going to be a matter of, right, we've got our own civilizational state over here. We do things like this, and you do things like that. You keep in your corner, I'll keep in mine. This is our neck of the woods. That is your neck of the woods. So why would they annex Greenland, and why would they annex Canada? Again, I think there's three to this. So firstly, consolidation of empire. Secondly, of course, it's going to be so they can have a level of maritime control over that part of the sea. Because of course, as we know, Russia is currently building like loads of icebreakers in St. Petersburg, and those icebreakers are going to be used across the northern passage of Russia, which means that they can completely cut out the whole, cut out the Gulf and cut out all of the shipping routes around there. They won't need them. They can literally start building cargo ports over at the northern passage, break the ice, and plus, because the centre of heat is actually moving northwards, so the productive zone is actually moving northwards, hence why it seems that it's getting warmer. It's going to mean that basically China is no longer going to be trading with Europe via the Middle East passage. It's just going to be a matter of, right, okay, Russia's got the ice broken. They're going to basically charge for people to use this particular northern passage, and it's going to make Russia abundantly wealthy too. So that's what you're going to see in the future, and it's going to really give Russia a lot of power. Like, I mean, to have that shipping route is just brilliant, and I think America know that, and I think they want their own piece of the pie. But how that's going to work, I'm not entirely sure, you know. Maybe they're going to also want to do the same thing. Maybe that's why they want Canada. I mean, what are they going to do apart from intimidate Russia by putting nukes there? Like, I mean, they can, but are they really going to use them? I mean, if they haven't used them yet, like, I don't think they're going to use them. And that's a funny bet, isn't it? Because if they did, the world's over. Because, yeah, then it's all out nuclear war, and then nobody can say, "Ha, James, you were wrong," because yeah, we're all done then, aren't we? So yeah, I think that's what's going on there. I think that really the empire's consolidating. They'll have their great American empire, and that's going to be their section, and that's going to be how they continue on into the future, an inward-looking nation that actually looks at producing their own resources. How successful they will be, time will tell. However, they are making steps in a more positive direction now than they have in the past. The only problem that they've got is the fact that they deal in 4-year democracies, which means that they can't really plan for the future. I mean, unless Trump is going to declare himself a monarch and say, I am now King Trump of the monarchy of America, the great American kingdom, and declares himself as the eternal monarch, then, and passes it down to his kids, I mean, how can they plan long term? So if the Democrats just happen to get in again, then they're just going to rewind everything anyway. And then the Republicans will get in and they'll just rewind everything that they did. So, like, no one goes nowhere. And I think that's kind of the thing. I think that dream of just being able to have a free country where you change your president every 4 years is going to eventually come to an end for as long as China gets more competitive. And, oh, they will get more competitive. So I think that's kind of the thing. For now, it's kind of futile what they're doing. However, it's something, I suppose. It's something. I wish them the best. I hope they do get their country back. And I hope that they stop having conflicts all over the world. I hope that that's going to be the thing. Eventually, they'll just, get the pop on the nose that they need to finally say, no, you know what, let's consolidate. We don't need to be great by getting involved in foreign wars. We can just be great by making our own population happy, by having wonderful infrastructure, by having wonderful new cities and wonderful new trains. Wouldn't that be nice? Rather than spend billions upon trillions on the military-industrial complex, Lockheed Martin and all of these companies. Wouldn't that be nice if instead they just said, you know what, let's just make America great? And I hope that that's what Trump wants to do. However, we will see, won't we? What else would I want to do in Russia besides teaching? Well, I currently, of course, have my hobby, and that is woodwork. And I'm doing a lot of woodwork projects at the moment. So I'm currently getting this dacha into amazing condition. I want this to just be a wonderful, wonderful space, because it needed a lot of work doing to it. There's something that I've learned about, I'd say, the older Soviet people. They kept everything. Blooming everything, especially at dachas, I mean, for me, the idea of having piles and piles and piles and piles and piles of wood lying around is bonkers. Because that's what the case is here. We have inherited from my wife's grandfather like mountains of wood. Like, you could build a mountain with the amount of wood that we've inherited. In England, of course, it is the case that wood's quite bloody expensive. I mean, we don't just go around chopping down forests. I mean, Russia's the biggest country on the planet, so you would expect cheaper wood, wouldn't you? So it's certainly a lot more abundant here. So we've got all this wood, and it just sits there. And I can't believe it. Like, you can't just have wood sitting there. So now I'm putting it all to good use. I'm processing it, cutting it down, making new wood with it, making everything from poles to planks to furniture. It's a long, heavy process, but one day this dacha will just look awesome. So that's what's going on. And that's kind of the thing. Again, there's nothing that's more satisfying than building stuff that, is going to be useful to others into the future. And I want to build something absolutely beautiful here. Build a wonderful, wonderful quarter that is somewhat akin to the Wild West, but the Shires of Lord of the Rings having a baby. That's the strange dream that I envision. So that's what I'm going to do. So yeah, honing in on those tangible skills. I love teaching, and I just love woodwork. I just love doing woodwork. I literally do it for hours a day. If I've got time in between lessons, that's exactly what I do. So I'm trying to build something beautiful for the future, basically. Something that I can look out of the window at and say, wow, goodness, I did that. I built that. That's pretty good. It's pretty nice. So I guess at the moment, yeah, it's just projects and going back to the roots of building and building something for the future. Contributing tangibly as well as intangibly. So, of course, contributing through my extensive teaching activities, which is great. I'm always happy to see my students do well, but I also want to contribute with my hands too. There's something about those traditional ways of work that are just timeless, where you can build something yourself. And I've kind of built this kind of hatred for anything like IKEA-like, basically. I just don't like this globalist liberal furniture, this woke furniture. Yeah, IKEA furniture, it's just got that cheap feel to it, you know. It's like, it looks pretty, okay? It looks pretty, fine. But that's all it is. It's just soulless IKEA furniture. It's just got no bloody soul, you know? That's why I like building stuff. It's like, I have it the way I want it. I want my table this long. I want my chair this high. I want my chair that low, you know? And that's what I like about building stuff. Because you can have it exactly how you want it for as long as you can do it. And thankfully, we currently live in the world of information, so you just go on YouTube and there are some just wonderful, wonderful carpenters, wonderful, wonderful woodworkers who just tell you what to do. And you can literally engage with somebody by watching their videos and gain so much information and knowledge about how to do stuff. So I think that's wonderful, to be honest. And I'm kind of motivated to do it in a way because I do feel like I'm in a country again that's on the up and up, that wants to build and rewards people that build. And people will be rewarded for building. However, the country that I'm from is kind of hell-bent on destruction and destroying itself at this present moment in time. Whereas this country is in building mode, not destruction mode, you know? It's not trying to destroy anything. It wants to build things. It wants people to have more kids. It wants people to have life. It wants people to have jobs. It wants people to have the basics met at an improved rate. It wants to improve. Whereas my country is intent on moral, social, and economic decline in a managed way. So when you come out to a country that wants to build and you start building, it's enjoyable. You feel like whatever you do build is going to actually be passed down to the next generations. And it would be nice for me to have built something, both with regards to economic wealth as well as just physical wealth, to have built something for the next generation that's coming up, you know? Because one day my daughter will have all this to herself. One day my future kids will have all this to themselves. And it'll be nice for my daughter to say, oh yeah, my dad built that. My dad did this. My dad did that. And it's a lovely feeling to know that, okay, I did something and they're going to use it and I did it for them, you know? Whereas I just don't feel like I could say the same if I was kind of building anything in a country that was hell-bent on destroying itself. Do you know what it is and why I'm kind of doing things that are really of the higher order these days? It's because you can look up here, you know, with regards to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, such as safety, such as economic comfort and so forth and so. So, with regards to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, of course, it starts off with your physiological needs. You know, your food, your water, your warmth, your rest, and then you move up past your basic needs. Of course, safety needs such as security and safety. Then you've got your belongingness and love needs, intimate relationships, friends, you know. Your esteem needs, such as prestige and feeling of accomplishment. And then you've got self-actualization, achieving one's full potential, including creative activities. Now, the problem is in England, I don't feel safe. I really don't feel safe. I don't feel like I can trust the people around me, since we just don't have such an homogenous society that I can really trust anyone around me in a weird way, because you just don't know how people are going to react. So there's this element of safety and security, basic needs, just not being met in the United Kingdom, whereas security and safety is well and truly met in Russia. You are certainly a lot safer here than you would be in Britain, okay? So, of course, the next thing with the basic needs is, of course, in England, yeah, your food, your water, your warmth, your rest. Now, for most, I would say that they're met, but at a bloody huge price. I mean, in order to make sure you've got those, you've got to work a lot, right? You've got to work your fingers to the bone in most cases to make sure that you can have your food, your water, your warmth, your rest. It's just harder and harder to attain those basic needs every single year. And because you're always worrying about your basic needs, like you're never really thinking in a self-actualizing way, because why on earth would you give a monkeys about self-fulfillment needs if all you care about is worrying about your basic needs, basically? Whereas that's kind of the thing with the fact that, of course, there's a far higher purchasing power here in Russia than there is in Britain, and that is just a fact according to the World Bank. I've been through that on another video. The thing is, because those basic needs are met, you can start to think about your physiological needs, and you can start to think about your self-fulfillment needs. And that's kind of the thing, because those needs are kind of met for me. I can start to think with regards to self-actualization now, creative activities, creating things, right? It's a very difficult environment to think about creative stuff in Britain when you're always worrying about your basic needs being met, because that's all you've got to worry about. And if you want to have those basic needs met, right, well, firstly, you can forget safety and security unless you live in the countryside, which is a task impossible for most who work in offices and factories and what have you, with the little factories that we have left. But your physiological needs, your food, your warmth, your water, your rest, they come at such an extensive cost, it's so expensive, time-wise. So all of your time is just given to corporate activities. So you literally have to work your fingers to the bone. You couldn't dare just go and have a hobby. So, you know, strangely, it kind of happened when I was approached by Russian Road Channel. If you know Russian roads at all, they're a marvellous bunch. But I was approached by Russian Road, and during the interview, they asked, "Do you have any hobbies?" And I just sat there like, "No, I don't actually." And clearly that question comes up a lot. And I realised, holy crap, yeah, in England, many of us don't have hobbies. Like, many of us don't just have hobbies. It's like, it's what old people have, you know? And I just sat there a bit like, how do I squeeze? Yeah, of course, I can have a hobby here. I can have hobbies. Of course I can. I need a hobby. What am I being so boring for? Go and have a hobby, you know? So, yeah, you've got certainly a bit more time for rest and hobbies and acts of creation here in a way that you just don't have anymore in the United Kingdom. You just don't. You've got to spend all your time worrying about paying the bills. And everyone's also concerned about their safety. So it's kind of like, you know, for me, to have a hobby in England, I mean, I was working my fingers to the bone to pay rent and what have you. That squeezing a hobby in, like, that's just like, that just seemed crazy to me. I thought, yeah, that's just like a luxury. Because I wasn't brought up with a silver spoon in my mouth, you know what I mean? So, yeah. I realised, yeah, I need to actually get into creating stuff, you know, rather than just doing my job. Create things that are useful and loved for other people. Sacrifice your time to creative activities, and it's the best thing that I've ever done. It's something that I really, really enjoy, to be honest with you. So yeah, the whole point that I'm now in Russia, where my Maslow's hierarchy of needs is met. I'm not worrying about safety. I feel perfectly safe and perfectly fine outside. Never got into an altercation. Never had a problem with anyone. You know, knowing that, you know, we're safe here, yeah? In such a way that we just don't feel that safe in the United Kingdom, walking around at night and stuff like that, and always worrying about locking up and making sure that everything's locked away. It's got to be in the United Kingdom. If it's not glued down, it's going to be robbed. So that's kind of the thing. It's nice to live in a safer place. And you know what? It plays something on your psychology, because you stop worrying too much about the whole safety aspect when you're in a safe place. And you can start to then self-actualise and think about that of the eternal, that of the creative, that of the building of something else. So yeah, that's kind of my take on it. So anyway, we're going to be calling it an end for today's Unglued Brit. I hope that it was enjoyable, to be honest with you. But guys, I'm going to be signing out now. Getting back to woodwork. I've got things to build. But yeah, it's been a pleasure tuning in this Sunday and answering some questions. So God bless you all, and I will see you later.